got no rain. So that was a desert out there, and Central Africa was very high. The highlands would get lots of rain. So in the spring, when the rains would come, the waters would flow both southward into South Africa, or into North Africa, which, as I said, is a desert. And it would begin to fill up the tributaries, and all the rains would flowing into Egypt. And once a year, the Nile would overflow because it couldn't deal with that kind of with that volume of water. So once a year, there would be a great flood coming in Egypt, and it was always referred to as the waters of chaos. It was a terrible, terrible time of destruction. Well, of course, a flood is a terrible destruction. But along with that terrible destruction also came new life, because if that water don't come in, nothing's going to grow, and you think it's dead now, wait till there's no rain and no Nile. Then you're really going to be dead. So therefore, when the waters of chaos and destruction came and destroyed the world, Egypt, once the waters receded, had deposited minerals and all of the life that would then be the basis for a new life in Egypt. So they said that Egypt, like you and me, was born again, came out from under the water and was born again. And they call that celebration. They had a celebration of the coming of the great flood. And the symbol of that celebration was a quarter moon, like a little boat. It was like a little boat or a little canoe, and it was a quarter moon, the lower quarter of the moon. And that lower quarter of the moon in Egypt was called the word Akanoah. The Akanoah was the lower quarter of the moon when the rains came, the monsoon rains. And, of course, that's where we get the Ark of Noah. But it's actually the Egyptian Akanoah was the wet moon. And
Noah's Ark.
Yeah, Noah's Ark, right. And then when you get into Saturn, as I said, now, when you understand that Saturn's color was black, that he was a god of one of the many different Semitic tribes or groups, and of course, as I said, in his one of his symbols was a square. Then you get into the square black mortarboard that the university or the high school student wears on his head when he graduates. The square, he wears the square on his head, and it's always black. Okay, in most cases it's black. The priests wear long black robes, like judges. Now we're getting into politics because of Saturn, the old ancient Hebrew god, or one of the old ancient Hebrew gods. Therefore, the black robe that you wear when you are graduating is the same black robe that the judge wears when he's going to throw you in jail. Because the black represents Saturn. Saturn's the old Semitic god, okay? As a matter of fact, that's why today in churches and courtrooms look the same. Because when you go into a church, you sit out here with the poor folks in the chairs out here in the pews, but you can't go up onto the lifted higher elevation. You can't go inside the gate that has the little doors. You can't go inside there. Only the priest can go inside there and officiate for you. You stay on the outside with the poor folks, okay? And the altar is always raised at least 3 tiers, because in Egypt that's the way it was done. It was always the altar was raised so that the people could see the representative of God dressed in black. So therefore, the priest comes out on the altar dressed in black, and he is officiating for God, for you. He is the mediator between you and God. And that's the same thing that happens in a courtroom. You walk in, and you're the poor folks sitting out here in the audience, and there's the fence and the little gate, and the attorneys can go in, and they are your mouthpiece. They will talk to God for you. They're going to go talk to God and see if they can get you off. And he will be the mediator between God and man. That's where all of this comes from. And that's, as a matter of fact, that's where we get the word sheriff. It comes from the word Sharif, like Omar Sharif. The word sheriff was the lawgiver in the ancient world of the ancient Egyptians, and his symbol was the six-pointed star, or the Star of David. And that's why today the sheriff's got a 6-pointed star, the Star of David. And now when you get into all of that, now you're opening up a whole new realm of thought, because now our symbols on the streets begin to take on special meaning when you understand they come from the old ancient Bible. And when you find out the people who are behind the old ancient Bible, and now you begin to see how these symbols all connect, like the shell sign for the shell oil, and the arco. Arco is a square, and the arco is looking down on the pyramid that has no capstone. And I should explain that, because in the Bible, the 12 apostles. Let me explain the thing on arco. In the Bible, the 12 apostles are called the 12 cornerstones of the church, the 12 cornerstones. And Jesus is referred to as the chief cornerstone that the builders rejected. 3 different times in the New Testament, Jesus is referred to as the chief cornerstone. Now, the chief cornerstone is a Greek word which means the peak of a pyramid. The tip of a pyramid at the top is the chief cornerstone. So therefore, Jesus is the chief cornerstone the builders rejected. Well, the chief cornerstone on the pyramid is the all-seeing eye of Horus, or God's son, the eye. And that's why on the back of the dollar bill you have the pyramid with the chief cornerstone, and the eye in the middle, of course, is Iousis, or Jesus, the eye of God, or the sun, God's son, the light of the world. It's all nothing more than astrology and mysticism. But now we're getting into secret societies, for instance, Freemasonry, occult Freemasonry. We're getting into Scottish Rite Freemasonry, occult Freemasonry of the ancient East, the Assassins, the Knights Templars of the Middle Ages. And then when you get into that, now you got to talk about Steven Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah. See, they reading the Lost Ark. But if you go to the encyclopedia, or if you go to any library and get Smith's Bible Dictionary, page 23, under the heading of Ark, you will see a beautiful ark in Smith's Bible Dictionary, page 23. And it says the ark is the Egyptian ark. It was made in Egypt. It was purely an Egyptian idea, and it was an Egyptian ark. Now you can understand why in Steven Spielberg's movie, Anglo-American white folks are looking for the lost ark with the Nazis. They're also looking for it, but that's Europe, see, because Europe is the old world. So Europe's also looking for the lost ark. And where are the 2 of those people looking at, Hitler and Indiana Jones? They're looking in Egypt. They're not looking in Israel. They're not looking in Jerusalem. They're looking in Egypt, because that's where it came from. And they know. See, but they haven't told you that. Now, it's true that there is something to this idea of the lost ark and the Holy Grail. And, of course, if you understand that, you cannot understand Steven Spielberg's movie of the lost ark, or the next one, which is the Empire Strikes Back. You can't understand that one, and you sure can't understand the last one of what was it? The Last Crusade.
Indiana
Jones,
in the Temple
Crusade.
of Doom.
No.
The middle one, and then the last one,
right.
Indiana's the Last Crusade.
The Last Crusade.
Right.
Now, what I was going to say is you cannot understand the Last Crusade unless you understand what the First Crusade was about. Because if you don't understand the First Crusade in the Middle Ages, you're not going to understand what the Last Crusade is. Because it's the same crusade. And it's been going on for a long time, and that crusade is very simple. And I'm going to explain it to you real simple. It is between some very powerful secret societies in the world that make the mafia look like Sunday school. Some very powerful criminal secret societies in this world that would just scare you to death, even just knowing about them. And they are at work today in our world, and they are battling for the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail was a cup, and according to the ancient world, the cup was the earth. The cup is the earth of life. It holds all the life and all the blood. So the blood on earth is in the Holy Grail. So whoever controls the earth controls the Holy Grail, controls all the blood. So therefore, it's the holy blood is in the Holy Grail. Now, that goes back to this old idea about the shedding of the blood. Now, why are we going to shed the blood? Well, we're going to shed the blood to gain control. See?
And that will be our blessing.
That's right. That's going to be your blessing.
And
you're going to get blessed.
And the cup
is the earth. And the blood is you.
Now we understand what they mean by New World Order.
That's right.
Okay.
We got that straight. Now, once we understand that there are some very powerful secret societies in the world that you have never heard of, because any time you hear of anything going on in this world, you can rest assured that it's not important. Because if you heard about it, it ain't important. It's what you haven't heard about that's going to scare you. And so now we're getting into something. I know that we're running a little short on time.
No, that would be a good spot to take a break, and then we will go into this aspect of this discussion. Like I said, we had to take you through that in order to get to this point.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
we'll take a break. And welcome back to our program. This is your host, Marcus Lewis, and this is a special edition of Family Tree. We're filling in for Hamilton Cloud and Spectrum. Hamilton is away on a special assignment. We are continuing our discussion with Jordan Maxwell, who is with International Research and Educational Society.
Correct.
And I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to 90.7 KPFK Los Angeles, listener-sponsored radio. And where we ended on our last musical break, we were just getting into secret societies and the whole link-up to the ancient religious symbology, but now we've carried on into this development of the ideology of behind these secret societies.
Right. Now, before I do that, I have a little something here from my feminist friends. Churches, when almost all churches you will go to, will always have a pointed arch, and of course the windows, the stained glass windows, they're always pointed in the pointed arch of a door, right? Now, the pointed arch is because of the female. That's the female womb, the pointed arch, and that's why for thousands of years, a couple thousand years now, Christian priests have always been officiating and been in charge in a church, and they don't want women priests because it don't look right for a woman being in a woman. It has to do with sex, and that's why the pointed door on the church is the pointed arch of the female, and the man who is they're said to be dominating or ruling over or commanding over the pointed arch. He enters into the pointed arch, and at that point is referred to in the ancient Hebrew as the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies was always considered to be the womb, the arch, the Holy Arch, and that's where life comes from, and that's as close to God as you're going to get. And so, therefore, in the sex act was considered to be the closest thing that man and woman come to God. Okay, so that's why the churches have the pointed arch, and the stained windows got pointed arch. Don't have a thing to do with being holy. It's got to do with the womb. And of course, as I said, the priest wears the long black robe because he's wearing the garb of a woman. He's wearing the long black robe of the female because all divine wisdom was always assumed to be in the woman, in the female. Pisces Sophia is what the Greeks called it. So anyway, enough of that. We could go on all night only with things like Joshua, the son of Nun. In the Hebrew, the word Nun is fish, so Joshua is Jesus, the son of the fish, or Joshua, the son of Nun. And we could talk about Yahweh, Jehovah, being a hermaphrodite, which he was. The God of the Hebrews was both male and female. That's what the Hebrew words for the Tetragrammaton implied, male and female. That's why the Bible says that God made man in his own image, male and female, because God was male and female. And we can get into all kinds of stories. Oh, incidentally, I think I might have passed this point up, and I'm taking most of the stuff off the top of my head, so I'm trying to remember if I brought this point out about Islam and the ISIS dominated
Israel.
Israel, right, and therefore ISIS, and then with the coming of Akhenaten, as I said, brought in the worship of Amun-Ra, or God's son, Amun-Ra, R-A, and then taking that religion and moving into Cana, in the Palestine area, the worship that was already in Palestine, already